Okay, everybody. Hello, hello. Welcome. Vitaly Gimin here. I'm here with Norman Wolfe from the Living Organization, and today we're going to go even further into what Norman calls context for organizations. Hello, Norman.
Hello, Vitaly. Good afternoon, your time. Good morning, my time. It's good
Yay.
to be with
Yeah, it's a pleasure having you. You know, we had quite a lot of responses from some of the last interviews we made, and the common question that we kept asking is, okay, we kind of get that it is really important for organizations to focus on the being, and for leaders, particular, on the being what while they're doing their stuff, which is they need to do, and then you talked about a lot about this word called context, and some people understood it as, okay, well, it's, yeah, context, we get it. It's like values and mission and purpose. Is there something beyond that? Is it because I get a sense there is something deeper than that.
Yeah, it's in our world that we do a lot of thinking about. It is a difficult concept for people to understand, and the reason it's difficult because it's more as you mentioned the term being. It's more a state of being, but it's even deeper than that. So let me see if I can explain it a little bit. The idea that behind context and why I started to use it was, if you look at just the word context itself, it means to give meaning to. That's the little definition of the word if you look it up in the dictionary, to give meaning to. So it acts as a construction, as a blueprint or a template for why we do what we do. You know, the term culture is being used a lot today. And culture is often defined as it's how we do things around here. Well, culture, if you think of culture as how we do things around here, then context is why we do the things we do around here. It's actually what defines the culture. So let me explain that a little bit more. It's often, you mentioned vision, values, and
Purpose.
purpose, and all of that. Context is what creates the values. Context is what defines the vision. Context is it's what creates the behaviors. And if you think, so it's difficult to understand, and I know that. If you think about it from the point of view of energy, and this is one of the reasons I use energy a lot in the living organization model, and you think about the desire to have employees behave a certain way, to respond to life situations in a certain way that advances the organization's objectives, right? And wouldn't it be nice if there was a underlying pattern that sort of guided the behavior almost unconsciously and instinctively? That's really what context is. It's an underlying pattern that guides people's behaviors unconsciously and instinctively. Okay, so here's a way to think about it. You've heard of the concept of mob mentality?
Yeah, mob mentality. Yeah.
Where people, normal, law-abiding citizens go into an environment where there's a kind of like a mob mentality happening, and these very law-abiding citizens all of a sudden behave in a way that 2 days later they go, "Why did I do that? That's not who I am," right?
Yeah.
They literally get caught up in an energy field.
Yeah, they are sometimes also called, organizational field. There is literally a field you can sense it.
Yeah, you can sense it. And on simpler terms, you can walk into a room and you can feel the energy of the room. If it's really down, all of a sudden you walk in and you feel heavy.
Right?
And you feel like you're being pulled into something. Or if you're walking into a room and everybody's excited, you can feel that too, right?
Yeah.
So this field of energy is underlying everything we do.
Interesting. Okay, I kind of get that,
So
but that's
let me give you an example. When I
okay.
left Pratt& Whitney and I went to work for HP, the behaviors I had in Pratt& Whitney were oriented towards the context of a aerospace firm. When I went to HP, my behaviors were oriented around this thing called the HP way. I joined HP in 1973. There was no definition of the HP way. It was just something we called about how we were being together, how we were being with customers. Now, in 1978, when we were growing very rapidly, we ended up codifying, trying to put into words the way we were being, right? And we called it the HP way, and well, we put words to it and came up with some pretty diagrams and all of that. The context field is the little field that creates why people do what they do in an organization.
Yeah,
So it's,
okay.
it's the why of the culture.
Right.
But it's not an intellectual why, it's an energetic why.
Oh, well, that's big distinction, because Simon Sinek's talk about why. We have a whys everywhere now,
Absolutely.
and it becomes almost an intellectual exercise now.
Yes, and that Vitaly, is the key to the difference in that the mission, vision, values has become an intellectual exercise. But context is an energetic exercise. It's a feeling state and exercise. So that's fundamentally where the difference lies. And I can tell you, it totally impacts the ability of an organization to execute their strategy. It also what stabilizes an organization in terms of in these VUCA times, everything's volatile and changing and all of that. It's like the rudder that keeps it focusing in a certain direction, no matter what's happening around it. So it can either work for your good or work totally against you. And it's when we talk about people being resistant to change, they're not really resistant to change. The context prevents them from changing, because they get into this energetic flow of being a certain way, and now you're disrupting that flow. And they go, I don't, my natural tendency to respond is XYZ. That's the way we do things around here. That's why we are who we are. So context really goes a lot deeper. It goes to self-identity. It goes to who we are being. It goes to how we respond to the world. So it's a really, really powerful force, and it literally is an energetic force, like the examples of mob mentality, organization field, or those kinds of things we're talking about. That's the essence of context. And now I'm sure the next question you want to ask is, so how do we manage context?
Yeah, I will, and I think we're going to take it in the next session, because I'm going to ask you exactly right. As a CEO, says, how do I measure? How do I pull my rudders so that I can create what I want? Because otherwise, it's just a field. I hate invisible fields. You know what I mean?
Well, it's just like the metaphor I often use is that of sailing. Right. So if I'm focused on trimming the sails and responding to the wind, you can look at that as the activity field. But the current underneath the surface of the water, which is completely invisible, is really guiding the boat as much as anything else. And if I don't pay attention to that current, to the context of my organization, I'm going to get off track. There's no way I can stay on track if I don't take into account the current, the flow of the context field.
That's a beautiful analogy. We'll stop there, and in the next session, we're going to look, how do I manage this rudder? Because but I love this. I love the boat sailing, and the rudder is the context. Beautiful. Thank you so much. We're gonna take a break, and then we'll look in the next session. How do we do that? How do we sail?
Sounds great.